so you have learned how to make your very first character, but now you have no clue what you're supposed to do once the Dungeon Master says it's your turn. Fear not, intrepid adventurers, for today we'll be taking a look at how you play the game of Dungeons and Dragons and how you behave during as well. Welcome to the Attic Dungeon. My name is Sam, and whether it's seducing the first person you meet in the tavern or having no clue what a bonus action is used for, I'm here to help you with everything. So you found some friends to play with and you have made your first character. Now what? It's adventure time! That's what! Today we're going to have a look at how this adventuring business works exactly. Some easy tips on playing the game, getting caught up in your first combat encounters and your first non-combat encounters as well. We'll have a look at what you can do, what you could do, what you should do, both as a character in-game and as a player at the table. Now let's start with the mechanical stuff and have a look at what your character can do in the world of Dungeons and Dragons. Anything! That's the easy answer. The whole idea of not being in a scripted video game but having an actual human being running the show has a slew of advantages. The main one being that they can react to anything you do in a decent way. Does that mean you should start attacking every villager on sight? Probably not, unless you're playing a villain campaign. The idea, as I've explained before, is that you and your party are going on an adventure that the Dungeon Master has prepared for you. Some basic compliance with their storyline is welcome. Of course, you're welcome to solve the problem in almost any way that you and your party would like to solve a particular problem. Don't forget that your Dungeon Master is here to have fun as well, and probably won't like seeing you burning his entire world to the ground. Does that mean you have to solve every problem in the obvious way? No, of course not. Get creative. Throw your DM some curveballs to which he or she will have to respond. Don't take the obvious way in. Use spells and skills in unforeseen ways, and above all, have fun! Now that I've got the don't burn everything and respect the word that your DM has put into the session speech out of the way, it's time to have a look at how you interact with the world. And as long as you're not in active combat, that interaction is actually quite free-flowing. There is no set order in which you have to act. Your group can act in whatever order seems most beneficial to you guys. The Dungeon Master will describe where you are and what you can observe without really investigating something or looking around, and then it's up to you. What do you want to do? Do you want to talk to the shopkeeper in the market square? Do you want to head into the nearest inn for a drink and squeeze some information out of the locals? Do you want to get to know your party members a little bit better? Go for it. Tell the DM and he or she will tell you what is going to happen and whether or not you need to perform any skill checks. So that is the easy part actually. You just stroll around and do what you want to do. It is, however, a different matter once you have to cave in some skulls. Combat usually starts with the golden words, roll initiative, uttered by your Dungeon Master. So that is what you will do. You will roll your d20 and add your initiative bonus. The DM does the same for all of his little henchmen, and then he ranks all of you from highest to lowest. So the higher your total number, the greater your chances are of going first. It might happen on occasion, even though you have this wonderful +7 initiative bonus, that the slow-ass fighter next to you is going to go first, because you rolled a 2 and he rolled an 18, but in general, the higher your initiative bonus, the sooner it will be your turn in the turn order. Now, the grand moment has finally come. It's your turn! Now what? Well, your turn consists of a few things you can always do. For example, you can move. You can move a distance equal to your speed. The standard is 30 feet of movement per turn. Some characters will have 5 more, some will have 5 less. Sometimes your class choice can influence your movement at a certain point. But most of you will start level 1 with 30 feet of movement. You choose whether you want to attack first and then move first and then attack, and at higher levels you might even have the option of moving a bit, attacking someone, moving some more and attacking another guy. It's all possible as long as you don't exceed your allowed speed per turn. For those playing on a battle grid, and I'm going to guess that's most people, 1 square equals 5 feet usually. So your 30 feet speed human can move 6 squares per turn, provided nothing crazy is going on. Mind you, if you're climbing something or crawling or you have to get up, you will obviously have to spend movement speed to do so. Standing up from lying prone, for example, costs you half your movement speed. Your action then, and each turn you can perform one action. This could be seen as the main thing you're doing during your turn. Attacking requires an action. Another possibility is casting a spell. Making a skill check usually also takes an action if you're in combat. For fighters and barbarians and what have you, when you gain the extra attack feature at later levels, you're still only taking one action to attack multiple times. This is interesting because things like Action Surge, a level 2 fighter ability, gives you a full extra action. That means a level 5 fighter popping his Action Surge can attack 4 times in a turn. A lot of fun. I advise you to play a fighter at some point during your career. Now, when attacking or casting a spell doesn't seem ideal, there's loads of other actions you can perform. There's an entire list in the player handbook, but I'm going to pick out 3 pretty important ones. The first one is the dash action. You can use your action to get another move action, basically. You won't attack, but you can cover double the distance that you can usually do in one turn. There is also the dodge action. When you want to focus on defending, this is your best friend. All attacks made against you have disadvantage, and you get advantage on all dexterity saving throws you do. The third one is the ready action, and it's a bit more complicated. Basically, you use this when you know you want to react to something that is very likely to happen right after your turn, before it's your turn again. What you have to do is you always specifically state what you will do in response to which trigger. For example, if that bandit over there moves, I will attack him. If more enemies enter through the door, I will cast sleep on them. It's very specific, as you can see. This means you're always taking a bit of a gamble. If your trigger doesn't occur before it's your turn again, you don't get to react basically, and you skip a turn. On the other hand, if you're able to respond to a given situation exactly as you wish, the ready action can be a really strong tool to disrupt an enemy's turn completely. Important notes about the ready action. When you cast a spell as part of your ready action, you already prepare the energy required for this spell during your normal turn, and you will be concentrating on this. This means readying an action while you're having concentration on another spell. That spell will break and stop. You will have to focus on your new spell that you're holding. You cannot have Shield of Fate up and running on someone and then prepare a guiding bolt as a ready action to cast on someone else. That is impossible. So keep that in mind, especially when working with a spell like Haste, which causes your enchanted target to skip a turn if your concentration should break. Really important to remember that. Executing your readied action involves using up your reaction. I'm going to explain you in a moment what your reaction is, but for now it's important to remember that you only have one reaction in between your current turn and your next turn. So if you use up your reaction for something silly, you will not be able to execute your readied action, and you will essentially still have skipped the turn. So be aware of this fact. You need your reaction to execute your readied action. So what is your reaction? Your reaction is the only way to react to something happening on the battlefield in between your turns. At lower levels, the most likely uses of your reaction are to do an attack of opportunity, which is when an enemy decides to just casually walk away from you in the middle of combat. You get to whack him on the head with a melee weapon, or for the spellcasters, casting shield or absorb elements to defensive spells also requires your reaction. You cast these spells in response to being hit by a certain effect to minimize the damage dealt to you. At higher levels, you will get more uses for your reaction depending on your class. Some classes are really good at exploiting their reactions. Other classes don't really care about their reactions and allow more room for stuff like the readied action to be used in that slot. And then you have the bonus action. Each turn you have one bonus action that you can use. Again, not every class uses the bonus action as much as some of the other classes do. It depends on your class choices, the way you build your character, but quite a few things in Dungeons and Dragons require a bonus action and not a full action to perform them. Attacking with a second weapon, for example. If you're a dual wielder type of character, attacking with your offhand weapon will always require your bonus action. It is not part of your main action that will only be used to attack with your main hand weapon. Some spells use your bonus action as well. Healing Word, for example, is well known as a smaller healing spell that does not require you to spend your full turn. You can use the bonus action to cast Healing Word on an ally and still attack an enemy with a cantrip. A cantrip, not another spell if I would want to. No, if you cast a spell as a bonus action, you can only cast a cantrip with your normal action. You only get one bonus action per turn, and just like with reactions, there's no way in the game to gain more per turn. So keep good track of which actions on your character sheet require a bonus action and plan ahead. So now you know when you can attack. Maybe you want some information on how attacking actually works. Step 1, select a target. This might seem trivial, but please clearly declare who or what your target is so that there can be no discussion afterwards. Step 2 is determining your modifiers. The most common modifiers will be written down on your character sheet. For example, if I'm a level 1 mountain dwarf fighter with 16 strength and I want to whack someone with my battle axe, I get to add +2 from proficiency and +3 from my strain bonus to the attack roll. This is the +5 that will be written down on your character sheet that you use every time you want to hit someone with the axe. Other things that you have to determine is whether or not you have advantage or disadvantage. Advantage/disadvantage is a very common mechanic in D&D, and it works as follows. If you have advantage, you roll 2 d20s instead of 1, and you get to keep the highest one. If you have disadvantage, obviously you do the opposite and you get to keep the lowest one. There are some other factors that manipulate your roll. Mainly cover. Maybe the enemy you're trying to target has some form of cover, but that is ultimately up to the DM to decide, but you need to be aware that something like cover exists. Step 3 is rolling the die and seeing whether you hit or not. You roll your d20, you add your modifiers, and then the DM checks it against the armor class of the creature that you're trying to hit. You hit if you roll equal or greater than the armor class. If you roll lower, you miss. If you hit, you can roll the damage associated with your weapon. A short sword, for example, rolls 1d6 for damage, and then you get to add your damage modifier, which is again your strength or your dexterity that you can kind of glue on to the weapon for extra damage. So that's that for attacking with weapons. By the way, it depends on the weapon whether you get to use your strength or your dexterity modifier. Most melee weapons will use your strength modifiers, except the ones that have the finesse keyword. If a weapon has the finesse keyword, you can choose whether it's dexterity or strength. If a strength weapon has the thrown keyword, you can also use it as a ranged weapon. I'm thinking of javelins and hand axes, for example. Ranged weapons, on the other hand, will always use dexterity modifiers. So short bow, long bow, crossbow, darts, what have you, those are all dexterity dependent. Now, spells. Some spells basically function the same way as weapon attacks. Any spell that says that you need to make an attack roll, whether it be ranged or melee, functions in the same way. You add your proficiency and your spellcasting modifier to the attack roll. It's another case though for spells that require your target to make a saving throw instead of you making an attack throw. When a target has to make a saving throw, they're doing this against your spell DC or your spell difficulty class. Your spell DC is always equal to 8 plus proficiency plus your spellcasting modifier, which depends on your class. For wizards, this is your intelligence modifier. So a level 1 wizard with 14 intelligence, that would be 8 plus 2 proficiency plus 2 int. You would have a DC of 12. The spell also decides which saving throw has to be rolled. The wizard cantrip Toll the Dead, for example, says that the target must make a wisdom saving throw. So the target rolls a d20, adds its wisdom save modifier, and if that is equal to or greater than your spell DC, which we said was 12 in this case, the target manages to avoid your spell. For a cantrip, that usually means it does nothing, but a lot of higher level spells, especially the damaging ones, still have some effect if the target saves, so that could be worse, I guess. If you're into spellcasting, you'll have to know how spell slots work, and that will be the last mechanical thing we do for today. Basically, the amount of spell slots dictates how many non-cantrip spells you can cast in between long rests. If we take our 14 intelligence wizard again, he will start with 2 level 1 spell slots, which means that you can cast 2 level 1 spells from the ones that you have prepared. So even though a wizard starts with 6 spells in his spell book, and he can prepare 3 of those to be cast at any time during the day, he can only cast 2 of them, or cast 1 of them twice. That also works. He can toss firebolts and conjure mage hands all day long though, no worries there. Cantrips are there to help you be magical all day long. Now don't worry, you gain more and higher level spell slots as you level. For example, by the time this wizard reaches level 3, he will already have 6 spell slots, so it scales quite well. Level 1's a bit tedious for them, but it works out. You do always have to manage your slots, so keep careful track of them, because you don't want to be without spell slots when you reach the big bad evil guy of a certain dungeon or whatever. So now that you know how to clobber an orc's skull into pieces, or to conjure enough fire to burn down a small orphanage, it's time to have a chat about how to behave during a game. So you're here to have fun and all that. That is amazing. Those 4 other people at the table are here with exactly the same goal. That includes the Dungeon Master. He's not just there to make you have an awesome, epic, heroic adventure. He actually does this for fun. I know I keep repeating this a lot, but pay some respect to your Dungeon Master. He is enabling your entire group. Important side note, the Dungeon Master is not your enemy. If you feel after a few sessions that you made some major errors during character creation, like picking spells that turns out you really don't like, go talk to your DM. Chances are pretty big that he or she will allow you to adjust your spells or your skills, or maybe even create a new character, because apparently rogues really aren't your thing. Go ask, they'll probably even help you out creating the character to fit in with the character fantasy that you want to play. When it comes to preparing for a game, do yourself a favor and do 2 things. A, print out your character sheet, and B, read it. It's okay if you're new and you don't know how the game works yet to ask questions. That is super fine, the more you know, right? But take the time to read your character sheet. See what your character can do before you head into play. Ask your questions, maybe even better at the beginning of the session. If you're like, can't really figure out how this spell works, can anyone explain? The DM or the other players will be glad to help you. If at any point you have any question because you've been reading your character sheet and you don't get something, ask away. If, however, we are at session 12 and you still don't know how an attack roll works, or you still don't know what Fireball does or how sneak attack works because you've never read your character sheet, the rest of the table is allowed to hate you just a little bit. So come prepared, know what your character can do, and if you're not sure, ask away. The other reason why a physical character sheet is obviously awesome is for taking notes. Your dungeon master will be handing out a lot of information, and now and then you might have to write down a name or something to remember later on. Even if you don't use your physical character sheet to track your resources, bring one. I use my phone a lot for character management. My HP, my class resources like spell slots or superiority dice when I'm a battle master fighter. I track all of those on my phone and that works perfectly for me. But I still have the paper one to take notes for quick references, and if the internet decides to explode or my phone is on a holiday, I'm not stuck not being able to play. I still have my character sheet, which is up to date and everything. I've said the magical word now. Phones. Phones obviously should only be used for essential communication with the outside world and character management, or looking up a rule real quickly. Don't be on your phone looking for funny memes though. You'll be missing out on what's happening at the table even if it's not your turn, and you will probably slow down the game when it is your turn because you're not prepared, you don't know what happened, you didn't hear what the king said to your party. Seriously, you're sitting at a table to enjoy yourself with people, so put the phone away. Allow yourself to be immersed in the world that is being created in front of your eyes. Don't be afraid to hog the spotlight now and then if you have a cool idea, but allow other people to shine as well. You're a team and no one can be good at everything, not even the bard. If you're the gung-ho strongman who likes to bash indoors, allow the sneaky ones and spellcasters to set up a trap now and then, and vice versa. If you're the sneaky stabby type, allow your barbarian to kick in a door now and then if that's what he wants to do. In general, don't be a douche to your table mates and you should be fine. One last thing. Don't exclude people who want to learn the game. D&D 5e has been gaining massive momentum the past few years, and a lot of people are wanting to learn the game. Even people who've never been into role-playing games before have heard of this game and are willing to try. Enable them. Help them out. If it lies within your powers to run a one-shot for these people, do it. Introduce them to the game, even if they look like people who are absolutely not into this nerdy shit. Give it a whirl. You might be surprised at how well they like playing the game, and you might gain a few new friends to talk about the game with, and I mean, that's good, innit? And that's all you're getting this week. Now go, look for people and play! For your information, the next bit in my series for new players will handle what most new players find the most difficult aspect of Dungeons and Dragons, and that is the role-playing aspect. So stay tuned, and then I'm sure we'll see each other again in the Attic Dungeon.